Hi, my name is Jack O'Brien. I'm going to be providing a general overview of this instrument, the Behringer K2. The Behringer K2 is a hardware clone of the famous, also semi-modular Korg MS-20 synthesizer. It carries over the patch bay, dual VCOs, and dual filters from the MS-20. The only absence really is the keyboard, but the Behringer K2 has full MIDI and CV functionality, which I'll get into. Um, Overall, I'm pretty impressed with this device for how it captures the aggressive, dirty modular quality that the original synth has. That made it really attractive to like industrial and techno artists, and I'm sure many other people. I'm gonna start with just a quick little connection tutorial of how I use the device with, in my case, the DAW I use is Ableton. So now I have Ableton open, and I'm gonna show you how I connect it. Um, I have a empty MIDI channel right here because I'm going to be using the device called external instrument. It's really handy. Unfortunately, I don't have the device with me because I'm on my personal laptop, but there's this MIDI 2 section, and as long as your preferences are set up correctly, um, and the device is connected via USB, you should be able to send MIDI input. The K2 will pop up right here. And then audio from, you'll just select the channel of the audio interface that the Behringer is sending audio to. And then simple as that, you can play it with any MIDI controller, or you can even send like MIDI like parts that you have written out. You can send those to the device as well, and it will play back those. I think the most intuitive way of covering this device would be to start with at the beginning of the signal chain with the dual VCOs. VCO 1 has 4 waveforms available. I'm going to make it so I can only hear VCO 1. I'm going to turn that guy all the way up. Leave VCO 2 down at 0. And I forgive you, it might be hard to hear, but that's the triangle wave. That's the lowest harmonic content waveform available on the device. You also have the classic sawtooth. You have the square / pulse waveform. This knob right here, uniquely for this waveform, can modulate the pulse width, get it really thin and nasally until it's gone, wipes itself out of existence, or you can get it really nice and fat square wave. You also have noise. I don't find much use for this because you can actually get noise from, there is a native noise generator in the patch bay. So then you don't have to waste a perfectly good synth voice on just noise. Finally, there's the scaling knob. The scaling knob for VCO 1 is exactly 1 octave lower than VCO 2. So those are the octaves available to you. Still, it does get pretty high, but with the lower octave scaling, it's kind of implied that this will function as your sub voice, lower voice. So now I'm going to move on to VCO 2 right here. Turning that one up. It's on the lowest scaling option. I'm starting with the sawtooth as a square wave, which is the same thing as having it on the square / pulse option, having it all the way to the left, and then it has that like thin pulse sound almost, which is the same as if you had this here for VCO 1. And instead of having that pulse modulation knob, the VCO 2 has a pitch modulation knob. That can be handy if you're trying to get like a detune sound, or like tune them to specific intervals, because the only more fine tuning than just the octave control that you have. So like, there's two, I'm gonna have both of them on saw waves, or both of them on saw waves, and you get that crunchy dissonance. Finally, I want to cover the ring modulation function of VCO2, which is all the way on the right. It's very sensitive to pitch. Right now I have only VCO2 level set up. VCO1 is all the way down. This knob not only controls the VCO1 pulse width, but that pulse width is what affects the ring modulation of VCO2. So as you can hear, it's changing. As I change this knob. Finally, I'm going to go over, these are both some pretty self-explanatory, commonplace knobs that you'll find on other synthesizers. You have the master tune, controls, I'm going to put them both on saw for now. You have the master tune for just detuning both. That's good if you're trying to tune the instrument to something else that might not be in tune. And then you have the classic portamento. It's like a glide. See, like the amount of time it takes from one pitch to get to the other. And that just about covers it for the VCOs. So now I'm going to move on to the filters. Probably the most famous / infamous quality of the original MS-20 is its dual filters. They both have like some really screeching resonance that it's pretty gnarly. I will get to that in a second. But first I want to cover what each one does. So I'm going to start with the high pass filter. What the high pass filter does is it'll taper out that low end as you adjust the cutoff frequency until there's basically nothing left. One thing you might want to do with that, that's very common, is using it to cut out those just really low sub frequencies that tend to muddy up and soften a sound. It's intentional. It's pretty intentional. You can change this, but by default, the high pass filter is where the oscillators go first before the low pass. Here's the low pass filter. Does the exact opposite. We'll taper off the high end. This is good for darkening a sound, softening it out. There's also some really cool, very common techniques you can do by modulating the low pass filter with either the envelopes or the LFO. Now I'm going to get to, they each have these peak controls is what they're called here. They adjust the resonance of the low pass, you can do it of the high pass and the low pass. So I'm going to adjust the high pass one, crank it all the way up. You can't hear it right now because right now the low pass is all the way open, so I'm going to move it down a little bit. You can hear that high gnarly pitch that follows that cutoff frequency. And you can actually turn it to a more aggressive, I believe, more similar to the MS-20's original filter sound with the flick of this knob. The high pass also has a completely independent one, so you can get real creative, real aggressive with that. It's like almost like 4 voices, so it's really neat. And that'll about cover it for the filter section. Now I'm going to move on to the modulation. The first modulation source I'd like to cover is the modulation generator. The modulation generator is basically an internal LFO. You can be routed to modulate a number of parameters, but by default, it's set to the cutoff frequencies of the filters as well as the pitch of the VCOs. You can mess with the knobs all you want. It won't do anything until you turn up the depth on one of the parameters you'd like it to modulate. So I'm going to start with the pitch of the VCOs. Right now the modulation generator is on the triangle, which is at 12 o'clock. And you go up and down. There's also a downward ramp and upward ramp, as well as some alternate waveforms that are available to you in the patch bay. There's a little modulation generator option. For now I'm going to stick with those three. Right now the frequency is set all the way down, so you can turn that up. Get more of that classic vibrato sound. You can also have it, here's like a handy use of the downward ramp. You can have it modulate like the low pass filter, for example. You can set, now by modulating the cutoff frequency, that sets like how low the filter is before, at the end of the ramp. So you get that really nice plucky sound. Very common. Also, just to demonstrate the resonance in action, I'm going to turn it up. Now you can really hear that. So that'll about cover it for the modulation generator, and now I'm going to move on to the envelopes. So the K2 has two envelope generators. By default, envelope generator 2 not only controls the level as I showed, but it's a modulation source for the cutoff frequency of the high pass and low pass filter. In order for it to have any effect, you need to turn up the depth, as you did for the modulation generator, on the EG2 control. And then crank it all the way up. Nothing's happening, because first you need to decide what's the lowest point of the envelope, how wide do you want it to get. I'm going to set it to pretty low, not all the way, but quite low. So now you hear the filter being closed, but you're not really hearing the envelope. And that's because the sustain level is all the way up. You got to turn it down. This determines like how wide or aggressive the envelope is. So the lower numbers actually are more open. And now you get a blip because there's no time between the opening and closing. You need a little window there or else you're not going to hear it. So by cranking up the decay time just a little bit, you can hear that window between being open and closed. As you turn it up, it's a longer window. I like it nice and tight. And I'm going to turn up the resonance just so you can hear things real obviously. So that high frequency would be the cutoff frequency going from high to low, or low to high to low. So envelope generator 1 by default is a modulation source for the frequency. Same as with envelope generator 2 and the modulation generator. You have to crank up the depth for it to have any impact. Again, with the depth all the way up, it doesn't do anything until you adjust some other knobs. So the attack time will change the amount of time it takes to slide into the correct pitch, or into the inputted pitch. So you can make it real long. And the release time we'll make it so the pitch will drop down once you release. You actually need to have your release turned up a little bit for the volume, or else the volume will kill the signal before you can hear it. So and the final feature on envelope generator 1 is the delay time. That's the time between receiving input and the envelope actually triggering. So I'm going to crank it up a little bit. So the red light's going off and you're not hearing anything until about a second later. Unfortunately, I cannot get the hold time knob to behave. It's supposed to like hold the sustain stage, so even once you press, even when you input, it'll continue as if your finger is down for you. Yeah, there's some utility to that. I don't know why it's being mean to me. But that'll about cover it for the envelopes. So now we're onto the patch bay, the final section of the signal chain. It can be a little intimidating. I'm just gonna go over like some basic like utility things. The first one being how to get those alternate modulation generator shapes. So right now, you have access. I have it modulating the cutoff frequency. So by default, you have the triangle, you have the downwards ramp, and that upwards ramp. But say you want to get some of those alternate shapes, the pulse shapes. There's the square right there. You can get it real. You can get it like fatter, or you can get it narrower. And to get those alternate shapes, what you need to do is grab your patch cable, and then here's the modulation generator. You want to grab that modulation out, and you want to patch that into the total, which will override anything the default modulation generator for those other shapes. So now if you listen, you can hear it's a square wave, and right now it's equal parts positive and negative values. Now it's more positive. Now it's super narrow. You're just hearing the little pulse. That's very handy for a lot of different sounds. And the other concept I want to cover from the patch bay is the noise generator. So as I showed earlier, oscillator 1 is capable of being a noise generator. I guess I'll put that filter back to normal for now. That's good and all, but it's not the most economic way to achieve noise generation, or even the most functional, or the most. It's just not the best way to get noise, because you're sacrificing a perfectly good oscillator voice, where instead you have this noise generator right here in the patch bay. You have access to both pink and white noise. I'm going to use white noise. And now is a good time to show that all of these are separate inputs, where it'll send a CV signal or an external signal into whatever stage you want
of the signal chain. So if you want this white noise to go through all the same filtering and the envelopes, basically just to be treated exactly as the oscillators are, you want to put it in this external signal right here, and it'll receive all the same processing, and it'll just become a third oscillator voice. So now you still have oscillator 1 in there, and you have white noise. And it's going right through the filter, as you can hear. Very cool. That'll about cover all the basic stuff I want to show you for the K2.
I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Thank you for watching.